I wanted to visit Tibet since I was 5 years old, since my mother read me Tintin in Tibet. Currently, to go to central Tibet, you have to go through an agency and travel with a guide. There is not much choice, so I decided to do the Kailash World Tour while I wished to visit the Mindreling Monastery and the Jokang. We have to stop in Chengdu and we sleep in a very nice old quarter. The rest of the city is very modern, very noisy, with a lot of constructions. There are strange things to eat in the street, and with a lot of noise, young people singing and dancing. And then men who play cards in the street. After 2 hours of flight, we arrived in Lhasa. It is forbidden to film the airport because there are a lot of military planes. Along the road there are many buildings, but partly empty, because most Chinese do not want to live in Lhasa. I was very moved to discover the impact of globalization on the city of Lhasa. I was running after the Tibet of legends, the Tibet of my 5 years, and it is by discovering the old Lhasa that I was able to approach and meet the beings who live there today. I am very touched by all these faces, all these looks, all these beings that I meet. I'm surprised by the diversity and the freedom that I discover in their eyes. Oops, little problem. My heart is beating too fast, lacks of oxygen, and I have to go to the emergency room. First feeling, everything is written in Chinese and it must be very difficult for the Tibetans. After a scan, 2 electrocardiograms and blood test, the sentence falls, I have to be repatriated. I am of course faced with the thought of my own death, and I turn my heart with confidence to Padmasambhava. And then I invoke White Tara for long life, as well as Palden Lamo, the protector of Tibetan people. And finally, I entrust myself to Yamantaka. In my room, I think I cannot bring myself to leave. I am going to drink tea with Tibetans. It is impossible for me to leave. I want to stay more. I decide to go to the Jokang. I have to go through a checkpoint to find myself among the Tibetans, and I am deeply touched by the fervor of their prayers. For a Buddhist engaged on the path to awakening, the first of the 4 preliminary practices consists of performing 111,000 prostrations. By prostrating oneself, one recognizes one's own Buddha nature and takes with oneself on this journey of awakening all sentient beings. Even if my heart beats fast and hard, I decide to stay in Tibet. The rest of the group goes to Mount Kailash, and I have the right to stay alone in Lhasa without a guide for the 18 days that remain.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
This yak that I meet on the side of the road symbolizes for me a past world which goes to meet the world of today. To my great joy, I received the permit to visit the monastery of the lineage in which I have been studying for 35 years. So I will finally discover the monastery of Minderling. The Minderling Monastery is expanding, and I enjoy watching the inhabitants of the village who sing while tapping the ground to make it flat. After this time of sharing joy, I finally enter inside the monastery. I photographed from a monk's phone the photos of His Holiness Minling Trinchen Rinpoche, who left Tibet in the 1900 to settle in northern India and built a new monastery in Dehradun. Padmasambhava was invited to Tibet by the king, Tresang Duetsen, in the 19th century. From his teachings were born several lineages, including that of Minderling, in 1646, carried by Terdak Lingpa, who had built this monastery. On my return from the monastery, I no longer feel tired, and for my greatest joy, I share the daily life of the Tibetans. I like to catch flying images, and it is a great pleasure to walk around and get lost in the city. I meet many people. I also appreciate to stay at the exit of the school. In the evening, I watch the children playing, and during the day, I spend time walking around the Potala. To my great surprise, I discover at the foot of the Potala many Chinese women who dressed as Tibetans to have their pictures taken and then post the images on TikTok. I realize that there are two populations that sometimes meet by indirect means. Chinese women, in their own way, appreciate the elegance of Tibetan women. Inside the Potala there is gold, gold, and more gold. And all this gold has no value compared to the power of devotion of the Tibetan people. I accompany my friend Tseten for a consultation in the Tibetan Medical Center, where even the Chinese go to get treatment. I'm impressed by the modernity of this place. I queue like everyone else, then I meet the students who are alongside the great Amchila, whose compassionate look goes straight to my heart. She tells me that everything is fine. It is just a small problem of altitude. I collect my treatment from the pharmacy and I go back once again to the Jokang. The second of the 4 preliminary practices is to repeat 111,000 mantras of 100 syllables to cleanse karmic tendencies.
Hello, consider.
With the wish that all beings can free themselves from the cycle of existences, the third of the preliminary practices is called the offering of the mandala. On this basis, which represents the nature of mind, it is appropriate to offer Mount Meru, the axis of the universe, the 4 continents, sun and moon, and many other symbols representing the generosity of commitment to the path of liberation. The generosity and kindness of the Tibetan people is reflected in the offering of the mandala. I go to the Samye Monastery, which was the first to be built in the 19th century, and it is said that it appeared spontaneously from the spirit of Padmasambhava. There is right next to the Potala a particularly inspiring place. It is the residence of the 6th Dalai Lama, whose walls are covered with paintings dating back to the 16th century. Carried by devotion, the 4th of the preliminary practices allows one to enter into union with the heart and mind of the Master through the recitation of 111,000 mantras, whose fruit is love and compassion. After the 4 preliminaries, the Master teaches various practices, including those of breaths and syllables. Then it is time to withdraw to a quiet place to deepen the teachings during more or less long retreats. The Buddhist practitioner does not seek to change the world. He wishes to participate from a perspective of wisdom. Dance plays an important part in the daily lives of Tibetans. The sense of community is very developed. No difference between the young and the elders, the rich and the poor. They are proud, kind, and deeply attached to their cultural and spiritual values. It is said that singing and dancing brings hearts together, and in Tibet, Chinese and Tibetan women dance together. To the east of the old city is the Ani Sankong Monastery, which was built in the 11th century and houses more than 100 nuns. In Tibet, in the temples, there are no candles. They are cotton twigs dipped in butter. My departure is approaching, and my Nepalese Tibetan friend Tsetan takes me to discover a trendy cafe in the center of Lhasa. Some Tibetan shops offer magnificent artisanal creations. Chinese clothing stores are extremely expensive, the same prices as in Paris, because a Chinese living in Lhasa earns twice as much as a Chinese outside Tibet. This is the only way the government has found to get the Chinese to agree to work in Lhasa. Living in both Tibet and Nepal, Tsetan explained to me that in Nepal this country is so poor that in families there is at least one person who goes to work abroad to send money to the family. She tells me that in Tibet the inhabitants are not allowed to leave their country, but they all have enough to eat and sleep. The police are present, and it is forbidden to pronounce the name of the Dalai Lama. However, women and men are allowed to prostrate themselves with the image of Padmasambhava hanging on their backs. In the monasteries, there are far fewer monks. However, Tibetan Buddhism is still alive, and it shines through the world. I received the initiation of Green Tara, and I rejoice to see that there are Tulkus, the young generation who take over from the masters of the past. On my last day in Lhasa, it is snowing, and I say goodbye to my friends. Before leaving, I told my friends, if I do not go to Tibet, I die. It was essential for me to meet these people, and I returned with my mind nourished by each of the encounters and my heart overflowing with tenderness. At the airport, I met up with my friends who were returning from Kailash, and Dawa told me, we, the Tibetan people, are resilient and joyful. we have chosen to live.